All right. We are live here for this episode of the New Warehouse podcast, and very excited for this episode. Very excited to be live again. We haven't been live in a little bit here, and just came back from vacation too, so feeling fresh for this conversation. Ready to dive back into some warehousing topics here and get into it with some friends from Coldtrack. And today we're going to be talking about something that I think is really interesting. I've experienced both sides, whether it's a bad relationship or a good relationship between sales and operations. And I think, as we look at logistics from our perspective, as sales goes out and they go to promise something, right? And then logistics is the one that has to deliver on that promise, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about that relationship, and a great example of how a good relationship has come together at Coldtrack between the sales and the operations team to be able to deliver this new guarantee that they came out with this week, which I think is really interesting. So we're going to dig into all the different pieces of that. We're going to dig into how did that come about and how did that confidence and trust really get built within the operation to be able to deliver on this. So I'm going to be joined by Warner and Luke from Coldtrack here. Warner is the CRO over there, and Luke is the COO. And you may have seen him on the podcast previously when he had me in the freezer at Coldtrack in New Jersey. So today's episode is a little warmer. We're doing here in this interview. But so how are you both doing today?
Doing great.
Doing well. Thanks for having us, Kevin.
Good to get you guys on here, and good to get talking about this topic. Now let's kick it off here for people maybe that didn't see that previous episode, maybe are not familiar with Coldtrack. Warner, why don't you tell us a little bit about Coldtrack and what it is that you all do?
Sure. So Coldtrack is a perishable e-commerce platform. We have a modular set of services. So standard, I'll just say pick pack services. The only difference there is that we do it in a chilled environment. So we focus exclusively on cold and frozen products. We also have a fully managed logistics team that can set up strategy, establish line hauls, basically kind of an outsourced logistics team. And then lastly, we have proprietary software called Coldtrack Live, which is one part order management system and one part shipping management software. So it allows you to optimize your orders for cost and highest on-time delivery. And you can use that inside of our facilities, which are located in New Jersey, California, and Indiana, or you can use our software, carrier rates, and logistics team from effectively any origin point in the U.S.
Yeah, very nice. And I've been in the New Jersey location as previously mentioned, and really greatly run operation, and really interesting to hear the story of how everything kind of came together, and have this focus on the cold chain itself, which is complicated to begin with, right? And now brought in these different types of techs, which we'll talk a little bit about today, to come in and really deliver a great customer experience. So we talked about kind of this relationship between sales and operations. So it's very fitting that we have both from the sales revenue side and the operations side today. So you had an announcement earlier this week, which I think is pretty interesting for someone that operates as like a 3PL essentially, right? So you have this 100% pack accuracy guarantee. So tell us what does that actually mean, I guess, to begin with, and then we'll kind of dive into like how did this come about, and what goes into making that happen.
Luke, why don't you take what it means, since you're the one making sure it happens?
Yeah, it means if anybody on my team makes a mistake, then Warner makes me give the box away for free. No, so but what it means is we ensure that we pick with 100% accuracy, right, and that everything you ordered is in that box, in the right box, the right quantity. We've, like as you mentioned earlier, we've invested a ton into technology. Our pick accuracy is super tight, and we've gotten to a point where normally you asked me this a year ago or so, if we want to support something like this, I would have maybe looked at Warner like he was a bit crazy, but Today that mispick rate is so low. It's like, sure,
Mm.
go ahead, offer it. Like, I mean, it's just the number of mispicks are so low that it's easy to offer, right? It's easy to offer. And it was pretty simple. I still thought it was a little crazy when you first mentioned it, even though it wasn't easy to offer. But us ops guys are naturally a little suspect of sales offers. So, but no, honestly, it's going great, and it's one of the areas where the customers really, really appreciate about working with Coldtrack is we take good care of their customer orders, and they get there accurately, pretty much all the time.
Yeah, interesting, and definitely, it's great that you've been able to get to that level of accuracy to offer this this guarantee. So, I guess Warner, tell us a little bit about because Luke just mentioned, right? If you went to him a year ago, he probably would have looked at you like, "What are you talking about?" Right? But now he feels more comfortable because the operation is where it needs to be to do this. So, tell us a little bit from your side, from like the revenue side. I mean, where did this idea come from? How did you feel like, okay, I think I can bring this up to the ops team right now, and it might have some traction.
Sure. I think it originally came about when we were responding to an RFP, and I actually asked Luke for a set of metrics. And there were metrics that we've been tracking, but when it was just kind of all on one page, and I saw how accurate our picking accuracy metric was in terms of mispicks, which was a gradually declining number. We pitched, it was great, and then we started talking about how great our pick accuracy was, and we continued to hear from prospects, that's great, but honestly, we've heard that before. A little bit of like, I don't really, a little bit of a jab. Don't trust you. Everybody says that they're 99.9%. We've heard this pitch before. And that was really where kind of light bulb went off, which is like, well, if we're so good, why not just kind of take this whole concept of a mispick allowance and annihilate it? So anybody negotiating 3PL agreements knows that there's typically a margin of error that's allowed, 2%, 1.5%, 1%. We were actually having those numbers go down and down. And I think it was just, it was an executive meeting where I just said, hey guys, what if we did 100% pack accuracy guarantee? And I did get a sharp look from Luke and a sharp look from Josh, our CFO. But then I'll just say Luke and our CFO very quickly just started running numbers, being like, wait a minute, if we're really at a 99, approaching a 99.9% accuracy, like we should just give that fraction of a percent of revenue back to our customers for not doing what they effectively are paying us to do, which is pack a box accurately.
Yeah, interesting, and I love how that kind of it came about, and I think it's a great point you had there, Warner, about everybody's like, oh yeah, we're at 99.9%, but you're like, let's put our money like where our mouth is, basically, right? And just back this up, like either we are or we're not, right? And I think that's great to be able to deliver like that offer to a client. I think certainly helps probably to stand out a little bit. And I think it's interesting you mentioned the looks from both Luke and the financial side as well, right? Because then it's like, well, we're gonna have to pay for this, right? So bringing that together, I think is really, really interesting there. So I'm curious, because obviously I think over time, like you have to build up this relationship of trust between operations and sales, as we talked about in the beginning, right? Sales is making the promise, operations is making sure the promise happens in that perspective. And I've certainly in my career have had instances where some like sales guy calls up and he's like, oh, we just entered an order like an hour ago, can we get it out today? And we're like, the cutoff's in like 2 hours and we have all these other orders to worry about. Well, like we'll make it happen and figure that out. And sometimes that creates a little bit of contention sometimes, right? Because sales is like, I know Luke probably feels this, right? Sales is maybe like pushing operations to do something that's a little out of capacity or out of the scope for the day or something like that. So tell us a little bit about, how over time, and I'm curious both of your perspectives on this, like how over time have you been able to build up that trust, whether it's on the sales side where sales can go out and say like, okay, yeah, like we can like deliver on this because we're confident in our operations team, and operations is like, okay, whatever sales is going to say, like they're not going to step out of like what we can actually do or what our capabilities might be. So maybe I get Luke's thoughts on that first.
Absolutely. I mean, I think, look, as most good ops people, we're naturally suspect of a lot of things, right? We question
Yeah.
everything, and so building that trust isn't always like a natural act to happen immediately, right? But with Warner, candidly, it's pretty easy. And he has kind of instilled not just his own personal values, but with his team, right? I mean, you look at our Warner and our sales team. They're inclusive, right? They're always looking for ops input. They, more than any other sales team I've ever worked with, they recognize that, our ability to succeed, right, in part relies on not just, how we operate, but also that the operators are okay with what we're taking on, right? And that if they're not, we at least talk about it and talk about ways we can mitigate risk or whatever it might be, right? So I think the inclusiveness piece is key. I think the transparency, right, that Warner and his team approach their work with is also key, right? He's just an easy person to trust, we have a strong team here, right? We have a strong, I've been to say strong team culture. We have a strong team, but a strong team culture, right? And we're we put our egos aside, and when that the person across the table from you is really just out for the good of the business, and you are too, it makes these kind of conversations a lot less emotional, a lot easier, so you can kind of get to a good answer, a good solution.
That's good to hear. It's good to hear. And Warner, what are your thoughts from your side of the table?
Well, I'm glad to hear that. We do try to be inclusive. So, but we have a really tight relationship with our operations department. I will say that responding to various RFPs, we've gotten feedback that we're very diligent in terms of understanding exactly how a pack out works. We like to review an SOP. We typically, as a sales team, will actually receive a box to see how it's packed. We'll take images. We'll send it to our operations team. We work together to make sure that pricing is right. Anytime that we need to make a concession, we're typically not doing it kind of at our own will. We'll go back to Luke or to Margaret or to Richard. You send you kind of all of our facility leaders, get their input to make sure that things are signed off before they're presented to customers. So I try not to be a cowboy, and I don't think anybody on my team does. I also have a little bit of fear because Luke is my neighbor, coincidentally. So if I were ever to do anything,
oh, really?
he would be probably knocking on my front door, pounding on my front door. So, but no, it's also been great that because Luke and I are neighbors, we spend a fair amount of time together. I mean, in this virtual world, it's sometimes hard to connect with people, but Luke and I will take the train into the city and we'll sit and just kind of talk for 45 minutes to an hour, and we have the water cooler talk in our New York City office, or we'll meet at the Edison, New Jersey facility. So my sales team likes to get out to the facilities. So we really try to do, again, not just inclusive on our end, but the company wide. We really do try to make sure that we're working together and not against each other ever.
Interesting. So the key is you got to move in.
It's got to be a neighbor.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah. So are you? I mean, you guys are calling in here. Are you guys right next to each other right now?
Yeah, we're probably like a mile apart right now.
Mile apart, yeah.
Oh wow. Okay. All right. Interesting fact. I didn't know that, but I mean, I think that's great, and I think there's a key there, which is part of the culture, kind of in that perspective, right? And being able to build that out. I'm curious on your side, Warner. I mean, how did you kind of over time, because there's like I think there's a line, right, that you have to kind of develop or start to understand of like, okay, like what can I tell people and what can I tell people as you're having discussions with potential clients or current clients, whatever the case may be. How did you kind of start to develop that and then be able to like disseminate that into your team to have an understanding of like, how far can they promise, or where do they maybe need to double check on something to be able to create that kind of understanding and confidence?
Again, I think it's just alignment with our team, making sure that we don't oversell anything. Having people that really understand the industry is also helpful. I have people on my sales team that have been in the food distribution industry for over a decade. People have come from other 3PLs. We also have a number of people on our staff that have actually come from the brand side, Luke being one of them. So just having people that have experience in the industry, tends to help not oversell when you actually kind of know the product that you're selling. And in this case, we're selling software, which is very much my background, but we're also selling people. We're selling the processes that we've created. So just understanding how things like our DePasco system work with, that's our WMS system that we recently implemented, how that works with our proprietary OMS, and just really kind of understanding how the order flow works. And if you know the product, then you're not going to oversell the product. I feel like that's typically what happens in sales, is when people don't really know what they're selling, and that's when they just start saying stuff that they certainly shouldn't.
Interesting. Yeah, and I think that's a good point. And so, Luke, from your side, from like an operations perspective, like how do you communicate over time? Like, this is what we're capable of, and no, like, don't tell them that we can do this, or no, yes, we can do this. Tell us a little bit from your perspective.
I think it's a few things. First of all, I think Warner is a very process-driven kind of leader, right? And he wants that clarity, right? Some people don't want the clarity. Some people like the cloud, so that they can operate within the cloud and bend the rules and do things, right? Warner's the kind of person like, listen, like, I don't want anybody accusing my team of selling things that without talking to ops, like, or selling things that we can't do. So, Luke, you need to be super clear with me what you can do and what you can't do. And so I think we start with a set of like really, detailed guidelines, but then, at the end of the day, there's always has to be some kind of exceptions, right? We're a customer first company, and, people want things that we typically don't provide, or might be a little more difficult, or what have you, whatever it might be, right? We want the ability to, have an opportunity to be flexible. And I think I've demonstrated to Warner and the sales team that, listen, I want these customers just as bad as you guys do, right? And I'm willing to be as flexible as I can. So, as long as you guys are, you're all connected, and you are having those conversations, you kind of build up, this thing like, well, hey, maybe this exception should become the rule now over time, right? Listen, you've bent this a couple of times. Can we open it up here, right? Yeah, sure, absolutely. Yeah, good point. Let's just offer that out of the gate, right? And it works well, right? At the end of the day, it's everything gets a lot easier when there's trust, right? And strong relationships, right? And that's kind of sets the foundation for the great collaboration across the teams there. That sounded a little too corporate-y. Sorry about that, but it was genuine and heartfelt, right?
It was corporately genuine. Yeah, that's good.
Corporately genuine.
Yeah. No, that's good to hear, and I think it's interesting to see the dynamic that you both have created, and being able to work together to achieve at the end of the day, growing the business obviously, but also being effective and delivering for those customers that you have. So now tell us a little bit about kind of, and maybe Luke, this is one for you to kind of start on here. I mean, how did you get to this level of pick accuracy to be able to have the confidence to say, okay, yeah, let's offer that? Because you mentioned, a year ago you would have been like, I don't know if we're quite there, right? So obviously, you don't just open up an operation and immediately like you're at 100% or close to it. It takes time to build the processes and do those things. So tell us a little bit about kind of the journey, in a sense, to get to this level of accuracy.
Absolutely, sure. I am at my core a process person, right? I kind of grew up at places like Honeywell, GE, Lean Six Sigma type culture, right? So, I'm somebody that's very process focused, and when you're very process focused, it's less about, you're certainly not placing blame on the operator. You're putting your effort into making the process as good as it can be, as error proofed as it can be, right? And candidly, just being in this space for a while, it just becomes clear, right? When you've managed thousands and thousands of people, and you've had thousands of pickers working in your organizations, like people are people, right? Like, some people are more diligent than others, but at the end of the day, you got to solve for, you can't have processes that only work for your absolute best people, right? They have to, solve for regular folks like me and Warner, right? So we're very focused on process, a big part of that. And the best way to have a consistent process, if it's codified in a system like our WMS system, like the POSCO, right, where it's like you have to take certain steps, right? So then the sort of process discipline is built in, right? And it just sort of has to happen automatically. You can't move from step A to step B unless you scan this, right? So and the other thing is just having discipline around metrics, right? Is making sure that you're measuring, right? And you have access to the data that allows you to see, hey, what sites, how well is each site doing? How are we doing across customers? Are individual pickers, contributing to defects more than others, right? Once you have all that clarity, you can coach, and you can get the people aspect, because leadership and coaching is part of it, right? It's not all technology. You have a great system. If you don't have good operating discipline, if you're not holding people accountable to the process, you're not going to be as good as you can be.
Interesting. Yeah. And I think it's interesting to hear that, because it is something that you have multiple facilities, as you said, right? So, this is not just like, oh, if it ships out of New Jersey facility, that needs to be 100%. It's all across the board, right? Which you have, potentially different cultures and different buildings, different types of people and different buildings, and things that are happening there. So tell us a little bit about too, like when you kind of announced this to the team, in a sense, what was the reaction like on the floor for the employees? Was there like added amount of pressure now potentially, or how did you kind of roll that out from like a cultural perspective?
Yeah, I mean, I think, candidly, we've shielded the employees, particularly the folks picking. I mean, I don't, they're held accountable to pick at a high rate, right? There's no reason for them to be any more anxious about, being successful than they might already put on themselves, right? So, it's funny, when you tell the site leaders that, once again, naturally suspect, people just want to be successful. And when you're an operations leader, right, you tend to be in a very transparent atmosphere, right? People can measure you. They can see whether you're good or bad. It's not, some things might be subjective, but at the end of the day, right, like if your inventory accuracy is, worse than another site, if your mispick rate is worse than another site, right, and, go down the list, right, on-time performance, it's like, well, you're categorically worse, right? You might be all fine people, but we can measure ourselves, right? And so anytime you talk about this heightened, and by the way, there's a cost to it if we don't get there, right? The initial act, right? But then when you explain to them, guys, like we barely ever mispick, so what are we all worried about here? It's like, oh yeah, good point, yeah, okay. And I mean, it was a really simple conversation, to be honest with you. We kind of like, everybody got nervous for about 30, maybe 2 minutes or maybe 30 seconds. And, 30 seconds after that, we're having a big laugh about it and moved on. Right. So, now listen, there's some things that are more difficult, right? If we were to, if we set the guarantee before we got really good at it, right, and then it was like, wow, we got to get much better, or else, like, we're going to start bleeding margin, right? Then that creates a ton of pressure on people, and those would be different conversations, right? And conversations I wouldn't want to have, and hopefully I would have convinced Warner and the rest of the leadership team not to go ahead with something like that when we weren't ready. But it's in this case, it was when the performance is that good, these things are easy.
Yeah, interesting, and I think that's such an interesting thing too, because when you need to be like 100%, like you said, like it kind of initially is like, ooh, like there's a little pressure there, maybe a little anxiety potentially, and then you're like, well, the reality is that we are pretty much close to 100% all the time. So there's really not much of a shift in anything that we're doing. We're just putting, even further confidence into you, the team that's making this happen and gotten us to this point to have that confidence, which I think is really, really a great thing. And so I'm curious, as this has gotten better and increased over time and gotten to this level where your confidence to be confident to be able to offer this guarantee, how has that increased potentially, the positive side of what you do, Warner, and how has that maybe even made it like easier for you from a sales and marketing perspective?
It's a great question. I mean, I would say number one thing is just confidence.
Mm,
Having confidence in a sales meeting where you can look through a camera or look into somebody's eyes and genuinely say that we are the best pick pack fulfillment partner out there, and really mean it and believe it. I really think that that goes a long way. It's not just a salesperson spitting a line at you.
mm,
Um, and it was. I'll just say this. I mean, I think Luke was a little bit modest in kind of how we got there. It took a lot of hard work, not just from the operations team, but from our product team, our engineering team. We invested a lot of money into, I'll just say, kind of our own automation, not necessarily on the floor. Our
mm,
pickers are wearing wrist computers. They're scanning pick locations. They're scanning events happening all over the warehouse. But a lot of it actually happens upstream, kind of in the cloud with our OMS platform. Um, our OMS platform is doing a lot of the thinking that at other 3PLs, and even before we rolled out kind of our OMS with DePasco's WMS, a lot of thinking was happening on the floor. But all of the order optimization happens kind of at our OMS layer. It will do things like automatically adjust coolant quantity based off of the destination temperature of each individual box. It will do cartonization logic to make sure you're using the right size box to fit all of the items, at maximum capacity. So all of that's going to happening, and only clean orders. And Luke, you can hold me accurate here, but only clean orders get pushed from our OMS down to our WMS. If there are any errors, they get hung up, and it creates an alert. And if it requires a
mm.
substitution or if it requires some sort of edit, we resolve it before it gets pushed down to the floor. So it creates a really efficient way to get accurate orders, and then basically it's like just paint by number. It's just follow what you got to do once it hits the warehouse. And again, that this didn't happen overnight. We had, Luke, I can't remember what it was, mistake proof core processes, I think, was kind of a 6-month internal initiative. I think Luke named that himself, but for 6 months, Luke, I'll give him a lot of credit. Also, Luke, with his experience working on the brand side, working in 3PLs, working in perishable 3PLs, coming to the table and kind of identifying all of the potential error points and then creating processes to ensure those don't happen. That was a multi-month initiative combined with our technology investment that kind of got us here.
Mm. Yeah, interesting. And I think it's interesting because a lot of things you talked about there, are kind of these exceptions, right? And I think, in my perspective, and I'm curious Luke's perspective on this too. I mean, if you think about how do you make the person on the floor move faster, right? And how do you reduce these errors? Like, you want to take a lot of the thinking out, right? When they start to think, that's oftentimes when they start to maybe guess what they should do next, right? And that's not necessarily what you want to happen. So how is that kind of maybe streamline the processes better in the operation, Luke, to take out some of those guess work maybe, and some of the extra thinking that they were having to do in the past? How has that kind of like contributed to this positive impact overall?
Yeah, in a lot of ways, right? Sometimes in very specific ways, like as an example, if if we don't catch an address correction issue, like up in the
Mm,
OMS, and it falls down to the WMS, and we don't catch it until we're printing out the ship label at the end of the line, well, that gets held up. Now, the line gets backed up, and then pickers don't have anywhere to put their box when they're done, and then everybody's standing around waiting for us to, deal with an exception that not anybody can just go over and figure out, okay, what should the carrier service be if, this isn't a valid address for XYZ, right? Or so there's sort of very meaningful examples like that, right? But it's also culture and mindset impact, right? Where when the work is flowing, right, and you get into a rhythm, right, and the work just becomes what you do, and you're not constantly faced with interruption. You're not constantly faced with the need to try and make decisions. You're not dealing with the stress that, well, what if I make the wrong decision, right? And when you make it easier for people to be successful, right, it just has a lot of knock-on effects, right? They feel like you have their back. You're investing in making their life easier, and that's really at the core of it, right? If I learned one thing over the years, right, when it comes to operations, right, it's like you have to look and see. You have to get in the shoes of the operator, whether that's through talking to them or walking the process yourself, right? Or creating good mechanisms for feedback from the folks who are actually doing the work, and showing that there's care and concern there, right? Then you will make things easy enough so that, hey, it's as long as I show up and I'm here to work, right, I'm going to be successful, right? I've worked in a lot of environments where it doesn't matter how good you are. Like, well, maybe it does matter how good you are, but unless you're great, like, you're going to feel like you're failing sometimes because it's just too hard to be successful, right? There's just too many barriers in your way, whether that's like, hey, labels are too hard to read, or, there's damaged product coming out of the gate and I need to hit a certain rate. So there's no way I could properly inspect everything and hit my rate at the same time, right? We try and, it sounds like such a sort of cliche thing to say, but it's really about setting people up for success. I learned that at Amazon a while back. I mean, it's something you always kind of know, right? But like when you see, I remember when I was at previous companies, I told them I was going to Amazon, and they're like, "Wow, man, you got to figure out how they deliver everything on time like that." But they just get everything right, and you go there, and it's software and process discipline, good sort of, kind of, once again, Lean Six Sigma kind of mentality around process improvement. And that's what drives it, right? It's about truly caring about the operators and taking barriers out of their way and ensuring, that they are set up for success. So when you do that, you could achieve great things in an operation.
Interesting. I love that. And I think it really, really interesting to hear about kind of how you've gone about that and how you've been able to build this over time, because it is something that, compounds over time, but it takes time, right, to get there and get the processes dialed in and all these things. I'm curious. I mean, what would be, somebody's listening to this or watching this, and they're like, what would be one maybe potentially low hanging fruit? I don't want you to give away all your secret sauce, right, on how you got here, but what would be like one thing that you're like, oh, you should definitely look at this as a potential driver for improving accuracy?
As a potential driver for improving pick accuracy?
Yeah.
If you're looking for something very specific, I would say that you're going to want to look at how your process validates that you've picked the right thing, right, and that you have a very, very clear way of doing it. I think a lot of my advice would be more generic, right? And at the end of the day, going from good to great is not, it's like business leaders, we always want to look at the big picture and be like, all right, what are the three things we need to do, that are going to get us where we need to be, right? But in operations, especially when you're looking at something like picking, you want to be in like, near perfect, right? Or Six Sigma, if you will, back in the day, right? There's not like 2 or 3 home run kind of solutions, right? There might be one in there, but like it's thousands, it's hundreds of like singles, right? Base hits, right? It's a lot of small things. It's about being maniacally focused on the user interface of the pick screen to make sure that, hey, that is super clear. There's not, only the 3 or 4 pieces of information they need to accurately pick are there, nothing else, so they can't get confused, right? Like little things like that don't, like when you're talking to your board of directors, they would look at you like you're crazy for talking about it, right? Like, all right, this dude's in the weeds, like, he's not a real leader, right? But like, but that's the level of detail that you need to approach these things with, recognizing that, hey, over time, when I stack, 10, 20, 30, 40 of these kind of smaller projects together, they're going to result in something super meaningful. And your operation is going to go from being kind of chaotic and stressful to like, man, we just get everything out on time and accurate every day. And it's not that hard. You have your tough days for sure. Oversimplify it, but it's amazing how it goes from feeling impossible, right, to totally manageable, right? Like I said, it starts with that sort of discipline on focusing on the little things.
Yeah. And I love that you said the maniacal focus. I think that's such a good thing, because I can totally relate to it. You're talking about the user interface. Like, if we just make like this number a little bigger, like people can read it better, they can move a little faster. And like you said, like you talk to somebody outside of operations and you're like, why are you so focused on that? Like that's such a little thing, but it does compound and add up and makes it a huge difference. So really interesting to hear about, kind of the journey here to get to this level of confidence, to be able to offer this 100% pack accuracy guarantee, which I think is a really incredible thing. But you've worked on the pick accuracy, and now you're offering, this pack accuracy guarantee. So I got to ask you guys, kind of like what's in the pipeline next? Like, what are you working towards to go on top of this potentially?
I'll let Warner answer that. He's always
that's why Warner.
He's always got something else in his pocket that he plans on throwing our way.
I certainly do. I probably won't name some of my ideas publicly here to put Luke on blast.
Sure.
I mean, look, there are other SLAs that at the warehouse level that we can certainly look at. We are getting very good at everything from inbound and inventory management. So we'll see what happens there. But I mean, what's in the pipeline, what we're actively working on, we'd love to kind of figure out a way to create the golden path. So we have guaranteed pick accuracy. How can we get to guaranteed delivery? And we are working on a number of different solutions there. There are insurance products that exist. So we are exploring some insurance products that could cover the full retail value of a package if it's delayed. I mean, we're in such a unique industry. If your shoes show up a day late, bit of a bummer. But if any one of our boxes show up a day late, for the most part, they're dead. So it creates a really, really poor customer experience. These boxes, even the cartons and the liners and the coolants are so expensive. And a lot of these products that we're shipping have a very high cost, even at the manufacturing cost level. So if we can figure out a way to kind of get a box guaranteed, packed right, and delivered on time, that really is the holy grail. And we're very close.
Interesting. The golden path. I like that. And, it'd be interesting to see how you continue to evolve this, and really, really interesting to dive into today, like just how this kind of came about and how you got to that level. And I love the transparency too, and saying that, like, like a year ago, like we probably maybe wouldn't have been at that confidence level yet, but we've gotten there, and, let's put it out there and let's make it official and put our money where our mouth is. And I think that it's great to see, and it's great to see the relationship between the sales side and the operation side being so strong, to be able to work hand in hand to deliver something that's really impactful to the clients, and also in future clients too, and helping them to give that confidence in you as well, that you can deliver for their customer at the end of the day. So really appreciate you both joining me today here for this live session of the New Warehouse podcast. And if people want to learn more about Coldtrack, or they want to put you to the test of this 100% pack accuracy guarantee, what's the best way to get in touch or learn more?
just go to coldtrack.com. We just relaunched the website earlier this week. So a lot more information about exactly what it is that we do. So reach out. There's plenty of forms to fill out, and I'll hold my sales team accountable to getting back within minutes. That's my OCD SLA. You put a lead through, someone better be reaching out to you within minutes.
Oh, okay. What's the guarantee there? Is there a guarantee for that?
Luke's
going to put that one on you.
Guarantee you'll hear about it from Warner for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Look, I'm not kidding. 5-minute SLA is the goal. So someone can test this right now. Hopefully, if anybody's listening and wants to start talking about putting a proposal together, my team is very highly responsive. And honestly, I pick up the phone and call. My team is available. So that's the way we roll.
There we go. So put these guys to the test, definitely, and really appreciate you both joining me today to talk about this. And if you missed the beginning, this will obviously be available for replay, whether you're watching on LinkedIn or YouTube. And we will also put this on the New Warehouse podcast next week, the audio version too. So appreciate you, Warner and Luke, for joining us, and for everything else. The New Warehouse, head to thenewwarehouse.com. Thanks for joining today, and thank you to our guests once again.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. Always a pleasure. Take care.
Bye-bye.